The show doesn't happen without the crew, and I've always felt like touring people are my people. So I'm glad to be talking to Chad Ward, road warrior, currently on tour with the Zac Brown Band, but longtime rock and metal touring veteran himself, touring with bands like Slipknot, Korn, Limp Bizkit, Kelly Clarkson, So Metal, Arcade Fire, Drake, Justin Bieber, 311, and sensitively Foo Fighters for a very long time, where he teched for Taylor Hawkins for many years. So it's a sensitive time. There's a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack. So let's get to it. But first things first, like it always is for you, how about that coffee?
I love coffee. And the funny thing is I didn't start drinking coffee till late in the game. So I have a lot of catching up to do.
Oh, no. So what do you mean late in the game? Like, how long have you been drinking coffee?
I've only been drinking coffee now for three years. 3 years.
Got
so,
it.
like, you know, and as you can tell by my gray beard,
it's really doing a lot for you.
When I say late in the game, I mean late in the game.
That's funny. Well, I'm kind of the same. Like, I just started drinking coffee because I felt like I was supposed to. Like, I was like, everyone else says this is great. So I just like kind of started. Now I have like a free, amazing, incredible coffee machine downstairs in my building. And it's incredible. So it's like, well, I'm losing money if I don't drink my vanilla latte every day. It's like I'm throwing money out the window. That's not how you get rich. Ha ha
ha. Yeah, I love it. Like it makes my day on the roads better in the morning. You know, like getting that boost that I no longer had. I always was a super energetic morning person. Then one day I noticed that was going away. And I was like, crap, what's happening to me? And so I started drinking coffee. And now with like being on tour with Zac Brown Band, we travel with our own catering, and they have a phenomenal coffee setup. So it's feeding the addiction well.
What kind of coffee setup are we talking here? Like the syrups, the lattes, tell me all the things. Because I love catering. Like catering's a big deal. Like what's the catering setup for coffee and everything else?
Well, they have a road case just for the coffee. So this thing opens up, and this is a big road case. I mean, so you got your Nespresso maker in there. They have like 4 carafes of different coffees in there already made for us. They have like the cinnamon, the nutmeg, the cocoa powders, like 5-6 different syrups if you like that kind of coffee. They have the oat milk, the almond milk, the regular milk, the creams. They have this little machine that, you know, you pour your milk or creamer or whatever in, and it spins and frosts it for you. So you have that nice foamy froth coffee. Like, it's pretty good.
I can see why you made the switch to country after a while. You're like, I've got to switch over. I've got like these guys and their coffee setup. Have you seen it over here? No one would blame me.
Yeah, like, I don't know. Like, I find country's been a good switch over, you know, after being in mainly rock and metal for 28 years, you know, a long time in that genre, with some mixed in acts like you said, Kelly Clarkson and Justin Bieber and Arcade Fire and Drake, Redman Method Man, and some other hip hop acts.
That's awesome.
Nicki Minaj.
Oh, wow. Oh, I think I remember you telling me stories.
She's quite a human being. I'll just leave it at that.
There you go. Yeah. For those just listening on the podcast, we're making like very over exaggerated faces. We're remembering the stories he told me. We're doing like big eye wink wink. So yeah, he said she's quite a person. So I'll leave it at that. So first, your music industry name is Yeti. Mine is Scandalous. Why is yours Yeti?
Well, it wasn't really an industry thing. It was before the industry.
Okay.
You know, I was already being called Yeti. So I really don't ever go by Chad, you know, unless I'm, unless it's family or I don't know, even like really old close friends call me Yeti. So the C word doesn't get used a lot.
Was it weird hearing me call you by Chad?
No, because I mean it is my name still, but I mean like I've toured with people for years. I mean, toured with them for years, and they've said to me, "Man, who the hell is Chad Ward on the rooming list?" And I just laugh because I'm like, I don't know. Then they never put two and two together. Like, well, where are you on the rooming list? Like,
that happened to me last weekend at Come and Take It Live, the venue I go to. I was on the list, and they're like, "What's your real name?" And I was like, "I'm not telling you, but it's that one over there. It's probably that one over there." Wink, wink.
Yeah, just stick with Scandalous.
Yeah, there you go. So, where did Yeti come from?
It originally came from my mother, but then it really got picked up and used a lot by 311 because, I've known Tim, the guitar player, since we were in kindergarten. Mm-hmm. And I've known Chad and Nick of 311 since 8th or 9th grade.
So is that how you got into the touring world? Is that how you joined the circus pretty much?
It is because I was going to go to culinary school in Chicago, and I was working as a chef at a restaurant in town that was a brewery as well. And we were putting on a music festival, and the owners were like, "Well, you play in bands and stuff." They're like, can you stage manage this thing? And they're like, 311 is going to headline. And I'm like, "Well, yeah, those are my friends." And long story short, on their way here to Omaha to do this festival, their gear burned down completely. The RV that they were in blew up while they were driving.
How does that happen?
A lot of RVs do it, apparently. Like, I don't know if it's something to do with the generator that are in some of them, but I mean, it literally burst into flames while they were driving at 75 miles an hour. So,
wow.
By the time
Al Qaeda is getting creative over here. That's terrible. That's horrible terrorism.
So by the time they got pulled over and all jumping out, Nick lost most of his hair. So was the transition of Nick Hexum, the lead singer of 311, going from long hair to that shaved bald look that he sported for so long because he lost his hair in the fire, mainly. So I got a call from Tim, like, "Hey, we have no gear." So I found some guitar rigs. Chad's mom was a manager of a drum store here in town, so he was fine. And the show went off really well, and Nick called me and was like, "Hey, what do you got going on this summer?" And I was like, "Well, nothing for the summer, not until the fall when I'm going to leave." And he's like, "Well, why don't you come on tour with us?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds fun. I'd love to get out of town." And then, here we are.
You never left.
30 years later.
That's amazing. I'm so glad you're not a chef. I'm scarred by professional chefs. I was almost engaged to one time. We would I'm kind of a pickier eater. So professional chefs just scare me, and I get nervous around them, and I don't feel safe, and I feel attacked and everything else. So I'm glad you're touring. That's so much better. It's so much happier for me. I like that so much better.
Me too, because I'm probably wouldn't have seen as much of the world as I've seen being a cook. So yeah, the road life is hard, that I didn't really think about, and then I had a son at a really young age, and it definitely affected our relationship for a large part of his life. I mean, he eventually did move in with me. And then when I have two sons right now, 6 and 8, and I'm so thankful now to be working in country because, they do the weekend warrior style touring where I leave on a Thursday and I'm either back Sunday or I'm back on Monday morning. So I'm home every week, no matter what.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'll talk to you sometimes and I'm like, oh, I know you're out on the road. And you're like, no, I'm not. I'm at home. I'm making coffee. I'm like picking up the kids, whatever. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. So definitely very cushy country. So what were the first few tours for you? What was that like being a complete new person to it? People always want to know what it's like. So we're definitely going to talk about like the highs, but what was it like kind of starting off with 311 and just kind of adjusting to that?
It was very exciting because every day is an adventure because it's not so mapped out like professional touring when you first start out. It's not such a machine. You kind of everybody's kind of on their own. Like nobody's making a lot of money. We were traveling in an RV, and at 21 years old, obviously everybody wants to party, and everybody was partying. But the only problem is I had to get us to the next city. So, kids, don't drink and drive. Even
so were you
though
tour managing?
I was kind of everything. I mean, it was just the band and me and a sound guy. So I was driving every day. I would set up the gear. We'd do the show. I'd sell T-shirts off the front of the stage, pack our gear, and then drive us to the next city. I mean, I was literally probably living on about 3 hours sleep a day.
Wow. But for all the right reasons. Like sometimes I do that and I'm just home working.
Yeah, and I mean,
that's not the fun kind. I'm sure it gets old, but wow, what an adventure.
I mean, the adventures are great. Even in times when we were like, we were staying with friends in Seattle and we left all of our luggage at their apartments. We were just going to go to Vancouver, do a show, and come back. Well, we broke down on our way in Canada and our way to Vancouver, and we ended up being stuck there for over a week while our RV had to have the axle completely rebuilt. And I was wearing wool pants. I'm going to tell you what, wearing wool pants for a week straight is awful and itchy. Horrible idea. But we had a lot of fun, even though that we were, stranded. First night was insanely crazy because we had to find a place to live or a place to sleep that night. And me and S.A., or Doug Martinez from 311, this girl offered us to stay at her apartment. And so we go there and she basically kicks the roommate off of his bed in the living room and tells him to go sleep on the couch and gave us his bed. And I'm sure he was not stoked with that. And then her boyfriend proceeded to come home in the middle of the night and saw two strange men sleeping in the living room and absolutely lost it. And we could hear them fighting in the other room, and their fighting progressed from screaming at each other to having sex at very loud levels. So me and Doug were like, what have we got ourselves into right now?
Wow. And you're not getting any sleep. And it's like at this point it would have just been better sleep to just sleep in the van.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked about like doing everything on your first tour. And I was asking you, are you just a drum tech? Do you do more? And you told me you do a lot of things. So tell me all the different things that you do and what goes into that, because a lot of people don't know.
Well, I mean, for the main part, I have been a drum tech for a large portion of my career. I'm also a bass tech, but I've done a lot of stage managing and a lot of carpentry. But I've also been a production manager and a tour manager and a production coordinator. Like if you're a production manager, obviously, you're in charge of the entire tour. You're in charge of, booking all the logistics, and advancing all the shows and dealing with all your vendors and, basically just making sure that everything runs smoothly on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you're in charge of the whole crew. Stage managing is a job I find that I don't ever want to do again. It's a very thankless job. Stage managers work their butts off for the most part. They're the first ones out of bed, and they're the last ones out of the shower and into the buses. And, it's when you have, anywhere between, no matter, I guess it could be anywhere from, if you're a stage manager, you have anybody from anywhere from 25 to 115 people on your tour, like you're never going to please everybody. Everybody's always going to think there's a better way to do something. So I find it a very thankless job when you're humping your butt trying to help every department, but there's always people in every department that are going to bitch. So I've passed on a lot of stage managing offers over the last several years because I just have zero interest in that job.
Good to know. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of work for sure. And it's very interesting to see and know what those people are doing up there, while you're waiting for the band to go on, and you see people walking around to like know what they do and know what they're in charge of. So it's cool.
People always ask, I want to go on the road. I want to get into, what advice would you give? And I'm like, well, if you want a consistent gig on the road and always be working, then you definitely want to work for a vendor. So you either want to be a sound person, or you want to be on the lighting team, or maybe the LX team, which is the video, But if you work for a company, they can keep you on the road year round if that's what you want to be. But like me, I've always been freelance. And if you're a freelance person, like a backline tech doing drums, guitars, bass, whatnot, you got to go out and find the work yourself. So it's a lot more difficult.
And it's all about, your character and how hard you work and being a good person, I would assume.
You got to work hard, try not to complain, even when you are angry, and just be good to everybody, I've always tried to maintain a positive attitude on the road and just try to treat everybody with respect and be kind to everybody. Just be a happy soul.
There you go. Be like Yeti, happy soul. And what goes into carpentry? So like, what are the different things you do with that? Very curious about that.
Like carpentry is like stage set, like the actual stage if a band is traveling with their own stage, or like any of the props that you'd see on a stage, or the curtains, the backdrops, like a carpenter's in charge of all of that, setting up the backdrop, or the kabuki in the front that, falls or goes up at the beginning of the show, or like if a band has like a thrust that goes out, for them to go out into the crowd, you have to build that every day. And carpentry is fun because, you're up early, but you're giving your stage hands to help you, and you just kind of do your own deal. You don't have to really deal with anybody. And once the stage is set up and you got everything up, you're done for the day until the show's over. There's none of that. There's none of that walking on eggshells, as I call it, praying that nothing goes wrong during the show, as, you're not a backline tech, hoping your guitar rig doesn't go down, or,
yeah. It's
nice not to have to, you're not connected to the artist at all. You can just be like, oh, my shit's up. Peace out. I'll see you at loadout.
Yeah, like you did your job. Yeah, it is kind of, and I don't know if it's just because I pay attention to that, but it is always cringy when there's a problem and you just see people ducking and running, going shit is
right.
Fuck.
And you always pray that the artist you're working for is, understands these things, that things are going to go wrong. You're setting something up and tearing it down every single day, or every other day, or.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always room for error at some point. Yeah. And I've seen a lot of kabukis malfunction.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I've never seen that happen before. Like, what happened?
You haven't? You've never seen
the
curtain in? Wow.
No.
I've literally seen it on every tour I've ever been on.
Really? I've never seen that before.
That's how the kabuki. Oh, yeah.
I didn't know it was called a kabuki, by the way. So now that I have a new vocabulary word, I'm going to use it in every sentence now. It's really cool. I didn't know that's what it was called.
The kabuki?
Yeah, cool word.
Yeah, because kabuki is just the curtain, but like a kabuki drops. It's like when the solenoid's up top will let it go and the curtain just falls. and they have all the hands down there to catch it and swift it away real quick. But I've seen it so many times where like it opens up and only half of it falls and the other half still connected up top. So you just got this curtain dangling. I mean, especially
does someone have to like climb up there?
No, you just basically have to yank it really hard. So you have about 3 or 4 people just yank the curtain, and it will, because you just got it up there tied with like fishing string or like on a washer or something. But it's pretty funny when you're at a Slipknot show though, and here comes the almighty Slipknot, and the curtain's like partially dangling still as they're playing.
I bet that would be like one thing you would kind of be annoyed about as an artist. Like, we are almighty. And you're dangling over here.
You got your curtain dangling in front of you. You got to kind of peek around it. Hey, everybody.
Hey, hi. To the worst well, should we do some more like space? What's the worst transition ever? Because like now I want to talk about your hawk tattoo and kind of transition into that. So what is this like the worst transition in the history like of everything? So let's talk a little bit about your tattoos first, and then we'll get into the hawk, because I see lots of stuff going on there.
You know, it's funny. I looked at Taylor's arm so many times over the years at that tattoo on his arm, and there's times that I was like, what a stupid tattoo. But I'm full of stupid tattoos, so I just thought he was part of the club. But it was it wasn't like it was done shitty. I don't know, but when he passed, I immediately wanted it. And being heavily tattooed, I just didn't want to put it anywhere, you know. And I've never planned on tattooing my face ever in my life. I always said like that would be no freaking way. And me and Taylor often, like every show, almost, we'd wink at each other at certain times during the show. For certain things, certain meanings, you know. I'll never disclose what those are, but it really, when I thought about it, I immediately knew that's where it needed to go, because I'm a lefty, so everything I do is left, you know, left hand, left footed. I wink with my left eye. So I just felt like that was the place to put it, you know, and so that's what I did to honor him. And I mean, he'll always be in my heart, obviously, but I don't know. I needed it. I needed it. I look at it every day, and it puts a smile on my face. So, or it makes me cry. One of the two.
Well, obviously, I'm an empath, and seeing the hawk tattoo below your eye, just watching you grieve and deal with the loss of Taylor Hawkins just on social media alone, is all-encompassing and an immeasurable loss. First things first, what do you want people to know about Taylor and his life and his art?
I want people to know pretty much what the good things they've read about him. He was such an amazing person. Just could fill a room, you know, with positive energy, and like his laugh. He had such a great laugh and smile. I mean, obviously everybody's seen him. He's all teeth. Loved to joke around, and he's just very humble. You know, like that's one thing I always loved about him. You know, he wasn't never carried that attitude like, oh, I'm in the biggest rock band in the world. You know, he was the farthest thing from that, and that's what made him so special. That he stayed grounded. You know, and he truly was a fanboy of music, a super fan. You know, like if he saw his idols that he liked, you know, he bombarded them with questions just like any music fan would. But you know, he would get away with it because he had the rock star card too. You know, like But I'm sure some of his idols were probably like, "Oh my God, this kid just doesn't stop asking questions." But that's what made him great. That he was, so grounded and just never lost his love for music.
Love that. So actually, that's just what I was about to say. So he kept his love for music his entire life then, because so many people really lose it. And you can kind of tell after they've been doing it for a while that it's very regimented, it's very much machine, and their heart's not really in it anymore. So his heart was always really in it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like whether it would have been the Foo Fighters or anything else, like he would have never stopped playing music. I feel like that guy would have been like, if he lived to be 90, in his 80s, he'd still been giving it his all in some way, shape, or form in music. It's just him. That's who he was.
I saw this really cute video and I shared it on my social media last night of him not being afraid of heights and doing some jump and some country off of a building. What were some cool times that you guys went out and spent time together, something like that?
Well, he always was trying to get me to write on things like that. And I was like, no. What do you mean? You're not going to jump? I was like, oh, no. Like, he was definitely not afraid of heights. Like, every time we were in New Zealand, they have this like bungee thing that shoots you from the ground up into the sky. Like, I can't count how many times he tried to get me to ride that thing. And I was like, hell no. And then the sky jump at the sky tower that he did. I went up to the top with him for a second, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go down to the ground, and I'll meet you when you land, because I have no desire for any of this. But he loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Well, especially there's so many people. It's kind of scary to jump off things now. My girlfriend recently, she's had like 45 jumps under her belt, and her parachute did not open properly, and she like fell down to the ground and broke her leg. So it's scary.
Yeah,
I used
absolutely.
to be more open to doing stuff like that, and now I'm getting older, and I'm scared to do things and jump and bungee and
Well, yeah, I mean that it was not a few weeks ago. That teenage kid fell off that ride. Like, yeah, no thanks.
Yeah.
Especially when you got like, no offense to teenagers, but when you got some kid making, minimum wage to control this ride, I'm like, no thanks.
I know. I just had my 22-year-old sister spend the weekend with me like last weekend. And I mean, even her as a 22-year-old, oh my God, no thanks. That was a lot. Just saying, with a 22-year-old, there's a lot there. I was like, okay, young kid, all right.
Yeah.
So Taylor's drumming was an inspiration for so many people, from someone who was so close to his playing for a very long time. Can you kind of speak for him about what he really cared about, like when it comes to equipment, his playing style, pearls of wisdom, anything that you might be able to pass on that really no one else could?
Well, like for him, like he like I said, like he's so into certain people that were his idols, and it really shows in his drumming. Like he was he's probably the biggest Roger Taylor of Queen fan ever. Stuart Copeland of Police, and then Neil Peart of Rush. I mean, these are three drummers that Taylor just loved, and you hear a lot of their styles in his playing. He like mixed all three of their styles to create like his style of playing. Equipment wise, Taylor wasn't picky. Like he wasn't that kind of guy. Like, I mean, he, the last however many 11 years he's played Gretsch drums, but like he wasn't ever picky though. Like he didn't, like he never even cared if the drums were all the same color. Like he's like, they're just drums. They're meant to be beat on. He's like, they don't have to be matching. They don't have to. Like, he's like, it's okay. And like, he didn't care if his cymbals were cleaned. You know, like if I spent all day, like, you know, if I cleaned his cymbals really good, he usually came in, spit on his hand, and rubbed his hands all over his cymbals and looked at me. You know, it's just like, and then he would say, "Hey, Dave, Yeti clean the cymbals." And then Dave would come over and spit on them and rub his hands all over them too. I'm like, cool, you guys are awesome. But, you know, he wanted it set up how he likes to play, but I mean, he wasn't just a picky person, though. You know, he was really easygoing and would just get up and do his thing, you know.
Yeah. There's an outlying feeling when you talk about something like this, like the enormity of how big Foo Fighters is and Taylor's legacy. There aren't really words to explain the weight of it. Have you thought about how it's like affected the world, and has it changed like your heart at all? Like, I recently lost someone, and I just feel I haven't really lost many people in my life, and I kind of feel like anytime you lose someone, it's like a little bit of your innocence gets taken away from you a little bit, like a little bit of your heart just dies off a little bit. And it's kind of that way millions of people all over the world. So it's just
You know, I've had four friends die. I hate saying the word die. I had four friends pass away within the last 12 months of my life. The difference with Taylor is, because of how big the Foo Fighters were and who he was in the music business, and he's just everywhere, you know what I mean? So it's constantly in your face when you're trying to process the grief and it's kind of weird because, you know, I post some things to my Instagram, shared some videos that were, you know, my private videos. And looking back, I would have did it differently. Like, I would have probably kept my comments off on all the posts, because with my Instagram kind of being open, like, I was getting a lot of people commenting these long comments, and I appreciate the fact that what they're trying to send their condolences, but also I'm like, man, like, I don't necessarily want it. You know, like, I'm trying to figure this out on my own. And people are like, "Oh, we're grieving so hard." Well, you didn't even know him. You know, like, you only knew him because he was the drummer of the Foo Fighters. You didn't know him as the person you went to the Sky Tower with, the person, you know, that you slept at his house, the person that you know, shared hotel rooms on the coattail riders. And just, I don't know, like, his passing has been really hard. Just because I feel like when I'm trying to avoid it, I can't avoid it, because I'll be having a good day avoiding it, and then all of a sudden I see Foo Fighters this, Foo Fighters that, Foo Fighters, you know, and part of me thought about dropping out of social media altogether for a while. But I came to the decision that I don't think that would necessarily mend either what's going on inside my heart and in my head. If any of that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that. I mean, it's just devastating, really heartbreaking, and especially like you truly knew him so much more than other people did. So it's very heavy, and it's just like, what's the right way to grieve?
I'm still trying to figure that out. So, like, you know, and fuck, for the Foo Fighter camp, you know, I wasn't with them in 21, you know. Unfortunately, me and Taylor were, I should say, fortunately, me and Taylor were still close and still friends, you know, but I was no longer working for the Foo Fighters as I chose to walk away. But, you know, sadly enough, Andy Pollard, the Foo Fighters longtime stage manager, last year passed away unexpectedly in his hotel room as well. So that camp's been hit really hard in the last year. You know, first Andy and now Taylor. So pretty devastating.
Yeah. Yep. That's. Yeah, I was gonna ask like if you've talked to any of the guys or talked to them, but I don't want to be intrusive. Like, it's also really interesting of like the correct way to respect people's privacy and how do you go about that? It's just such a thing. Like I remember the last time I really grieved something, I ignored it for a really long time. I ignored it for like a year, realized it wasn't okay, and then had to start all over again. So it's like, how do we grieve? The right way to do it, the wrong way to do it. I'm okay, I'm not okay. Like, how do you respect people's privacy? How do you honor people in the right way?
Yeah, I mean that's a tough question. Like I'm still trying to figure out too. I had Rolling Stone magazine hit me up about Taylor, and they asked some questions that I was definitely not down with. Like I felt just like the reporter was super friendly and nice, and I don't think he was trying to be disrespectful in any way. He's just doing his job. But for them to that early to be asking the questions they were asking, it was awful. And I just told them, I was like, I don't want to be a part of this this story if it's just looking to be a dirt piece. Like he was too big of a shining star, and there was already so much BS being floating around, from the Columbia media and whatnot, that is just BS. So,
I think you did a really wonderful face tattoo that would just make him smile so much. And I didn't even know that was, sorry, it's a little sensitive. I feel just really sad for you having that loss. Like I didn't know Taylor and I never met him or anything. It's kind of like a loss, like I'm a 90s baby. So it's kind of like a loss of our generation. It's kind of when someone dies like that, it's kind of like losing your innocence a little bit, as one who's grown up and really love that music. But I just feel like really bad for you kind of having that loss. But just see,
that's okay.
Women are silly. Like you never know. But I'm definitely like an empath for sure. And I've done a really good job of turning that off in a good way for my life. But just kind of listening to you talk, that's really hard. Like knowing or listening to like someone go through that. That's just heartbreaking. And I didn't know that story I just thought, which is, it's kind of like a teardrop tattoo. I was like, okay, you got a teardrop, but there's like actually like more meaning to that. And that's like an inside joke for you guys. And I think that's really beautiful. And I think that's so cool. I like that so much.
Thank you.
Happy note and just celebrating. Do you have a favorite Foo Fighters lyric or song that you just thought was so fucking great that you love so much?
It's crazy, like people might be like, what? And it's not even an old Foo Fighters song, but they have a song called Dirty Water that was off the Concrete and Gold album. And I don't know, there's just something about that song that the first time I heard it, I was like, wow. And they would play it live a lot on that last tour in 2018. And I just loved it. Like, I don't know. There's something about that song. Like I can't pinpoint it really. It spoke to me for some reason. And then, like a song, a lyric that is my favorite lyric. And unfortunately, it kind of goes with what's going on right now. It's from These Days. One day says, one of these days, your heart will stop and play its final beat. Because that has always had a lot of meaning to me, because when I was, young and stupid and 20 years old, I went into cardiac arrest from drug usage, and then proceeded to have anxiety attacks for like the next 3 years, thinking I was going to die and my heart was going to stop any day. And So I've always had this weird thing about heart attacks and whatnot. I would say, what you call it, totally brain farting. Sorry.
Okay.
I was total hypochondriac is what the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
When it comes to my heart. So when I first heard that lyric, it mildly calmed me down, kind of in a way, because it's like everybody, you don't know when that day is going to be, but it's true. One day your heart will play its final beat, and I don't know. I love that lyric. So,
wow, that's power music right there. That's such an impactful lyric, and that just kind of calmed you down and made it all settle and made it okay.
And that song in general, I really love that song too. I mean, everything he says in that song can impact you, is a daily life thing for somebody. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. Very cool. I like that a lot. So from Foo Fighters, just one massive band that's almost too big to comprehend, to Slipknot, presence of like the United States metal for like all of us, like favorite band for every metalhead. It's just, of course. Do you like Slipknot? Of course I fucking love Slipknot. Everyone loves Slipknot. So how did you start working for those guys, and what did you do for them?
I mean, I was always a fan. Like, I loved them from their first album on, because I've always been a metalhead at heart.
That's why I like you. There you go.
And with me being, an Omaha, Nebraska boy, and then being from Des Moines, which is only 2 hours from here, I had actually met Clown on numerous occasions over the years. And we had a really, really, really close friend in common, a fantastic woman named Sophia John. I mean, she was, instrumental in their career at the beginning of helping them. So through her, I had met him a few times. And then a good friend of mine, Stuart Murray, who's a fantastic drum tech, was teching for Jay Weinberg in 2016. In 2014 and 15. And he had some back issues and decided that he was going to make a career change and that he wanted to go a different route. And I knew a lot of the crew in that camp. So I got a call, and they asked if I would want to come do this. And I was just finishing the Sonic Highways tour with the Foo Fighters, and I was going to have basically a year off from the Foo. So I was like, yeah. So I spent all of 2016 on the road with Slipknot. And then that proceeded to me working for them again when We Are Not Your Kind came out. And yeah.
Nice. So it's really kind of wild that like you didn't totally just get like blind hired by people. You really had connections your entire life. That's really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Even in really big camps, like 311, you grew up with them. That's really interesting to me. Like Foo Fighters, you worked with them, and then Slipknot, it was even kind of like an inside, like, oh, I know this person, I know this person. That's really unique, I kind of feel like. And really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky to know some of those band members, going into that gig. So I wasn't nervous going into that camp, because I had met, like, me and Clown had, I'd gone out for burritos with them before. So, like, I was pretty relaxed. I mean, I didn't know Jay, but I had met Jay in Europe. They were playing the same festival as the Foo Fighters. And I went over and watched Slipknot play and sat behind Jay as he played, because my buddy was his tech, and Jay turned around, flipped his mask off, and we got introduced, and we got along well. And, and so and then Jay came to a Foo Fighters show in Nashville in 2015. So he hit me up, and I was like, yeah, well, I'll get you in the show. And brought him to the show, and he hung out, and yeah, it's good.
And did he touch your beard as well?
I'm a very nervous person always when it's something I'm uncomfortable doing, and so I finicky with my beard constantly.
Oh, you're so sweet for doing something that's kind of you're like, press, what's press? Podcast? Okay, I'll do it. I'll just rub my beard. It's great. So what's it like being in the Slipknot camp? Tell me about that. I mean, it's just big. Just catering, incredible, but just headlining everything and just bigger than life production. Is it just more trucks, but basically the same?
Yeah, the Slipknot. Compared to Foo Fighters, it's not a bigger production, but
oh, well, I guess that's true. I forget who I'm talking to. I don't normally.
I think we had like 60 trucks on Justin Bieber when I was on that.
Wow.
But that was all stadiums, you know what I mean? And that was a massive production.
60 trucks for what?
A lot of staging and a lot of everything. It's just a lot of everything, when you're that big of when we were doing stadiums on Foo Fighters, I think we were at like 22 to 26 trucks, and
wow.
And like Zac Brown right now, like we average probably 12 to 14 trucks, but when we go in and do stadiums, obviously we have to bring in more supplemental PA and whatnot. So then you add a few more trucks. But Slipknot was fun, like they're a good group of guys. The funny thing is people always, I don't know, people want to go backstage, fans want to go backstage. It's very boring. Like, I think fans would be like, what the fuck? Like, most of them hiding out like in their buses, or you got Mick sitting in catering on his iPad, just playing a game for God knows how long. And, it's like crickets chirping back there.
Yeah, we've all seen the meme where it's just like what people think is happening backstage and like what it's actually like backstage. It's just people on their cell phones and stuff like that. So,
like I just went recently to see the metal tour of the year, and Randall of Lamb of God was like,
you don't even have to say of Lamb of God. Anyone listening to this podcast,
okay.
If you say Randall, they're like,
So he, he, as and the world knows, he was just coming back from COVID when they hit Omaha, and he told me, he's like, so we're not really doing any backstage right now or whatever. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Like, I don't care about coming backstage. Like, to stand in a hallway or go get shuffled to the catering room and sit there twiddling your thumbs. I'm like, I don't ever feel the need when I go to a show to want to be backstage, because I know it's generally boring, and you as you may know, a lot of times crew look at the people come backstage like, what the fuck is this person doing back here? Like, I don't ever want to be that person. I don't ever want to be in the way. I know what it's like to be working all day, and I tell every band, like, you don't have to give me a pass. I don't need a pass. I don't need to go backstage, unless it's like a really close friend and I just want to chat with them. Then I'll just be like, I don't need to go backstage. I'll just meet you at your bus.
Yeah, there you go. So how's it been? This is part 2, just wrapping up to make a complete episode from our conversation like 7-8 months ago, something like that. So how was Christmas with your family?
Christmas was good. Boys and little girls, just children in general, always make holidays much better.
Your beard is bigger. It's bigger, right?
Since we last talked, yeah. It has now probably about 3 inches longer than the last time we spoke.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different look, like Santa all year round. Is that, are we doing sexy Santa all year round, Gray Fox?
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing with this manginess.
I don't know. Well, your nickname's already Yeti, so.
I mean, I don't know if I should cut it off or keep it growing. I don't know.
I don't know. Have you had any new ink since I've seen you? Your hand?
Well, yeah. I got my new Freddie Mercury on my thumb.
Awesome.
Yep.
And there you go.
I just blacked my hand a day ago.
A day?
Yeah, 1 day ago.
Ow.
Yeah, it's very swollen, and I look like I have a gorilla hand right now.
Yeah, I see that.
It's weird when you see it up close. It looks like gorilla skin when you're at the zoo. It's insane looking.
That's funny. Why'd you black it out?
Just
Are you gonna black out the whole thing?
Well, my whole left arm is blacked out. So,
just match.
But I'm having white flowers done on everything. So I have to black my entire left arm out one more time, and then I have to shade all the white, and then I'm officially finally done.
Yeah, it's a requirement. You have to. Like, of all the responsibilities we have in life, you have to black it all out. These are just things you have to do.
It has been a long process, this tattoo.
How long were you in the chair yesterday for that, blacking that out?
That I was only in the chair for 45 minutes yesterday, blacking that part of my hand out.
Okay.
But I mean, I started this shit, back in 2019. I did the first half arm blackout, then I did the next part of my arm, but I've blacked my entire arm out completely twice. And I've done all the outlining of the white 3 times now. So now I have to shade the white twice and then black out one more time, and I'm done.
Okay. Until you get another idea, though, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
So one more idea comes to my head.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about Autism Awareness. It's something that's on your Instagram profile. Is one of your children autistic?
Both my boys are.
Wow, they are? Okay, yeah. So talk about that.
It was very challenging, because obviously I had heard of autism before my children were born, but it's not something like I'd ever fully looked up, or studied or anything. And my 9-year-old inside walking, we noticed that whenever he did not have shoes on, he'd walk on his tippy toes. And that was the first kind of sign that we're because my wife had read that, kids that are autistic tend to walk on their tippy toes. So it was huh. And then just little signs here and there. And then, long story short, yeah, both boys are on the spectrum.
Gotcha.
And it's weird. Some things are alike, but a lot of things are completely different with them as far as certain things on the spectrum for them.
Understood. Yeah, my nephew is severely autistic as well. So it's definitely different for every child. Are there things that you incorporate at home that you've noticed that really help with both of your kids?
Absolutely. And I've learned a lot of different things to deal with when the meltdowns happen with each one of them. How to handle it, I should say. How to get them to reset and calm, I should say. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't change it for the world. I'll tell you that right now. Somebody asked me that not that long ago, if you could take your kids' autism away, would you? I was like, no, because they're both so amazing in unique ways that I would never want that to be gone. But that makes sense of any sort.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the reason why you love anyone. It's especially, different levels of love. And if you think about all the different people in your life that you love them for the things that make them them. So yeah, absolutely. That definitely makes sense. Is there anything you wish the public knew more about autism and how to interact with people who have autism?
I wish more people, like people that don't have autistic children or any kind of awareness with autism, would learn more, because like he has a kid in his class that lived down the street from us, and this is sad. Like the parents won't let Bixby come over anymore. And it was right after he was over there, and I went to pick him up one day, and I was talking to the parents, and I was like, with Bixby being autistic, they both looked at me and they're like, "What?" I was like, "Oh yeah, he has autism," and they haven't invited him back ever since.
Why?
Isn't that crazy? Isn't
that is
shit?
So crazy.
It's so crappy, and I'm like, because people. That's why I said I wish more people would be aware of in what it is, because they immediately just think, "Oh my gosh, I can't handle that,"
Mm-hmm.
and they don't want to deal with it when they know nothing about it. I'm like, it's not like it's not a disease you're going to catch,
That's
And the
so
funny thing
crazy
is
and so
and the
upsetting.
funny thing is the father said, he goes, "Oh, I would have never guessed that." And I'm like, well, yeah, exactly. We've done a lot of work, but still, they both just. So now when I drive past their house, I'm like, "Fuck you."
That's really crazy. I don't have kids yet, and it's just like a wild thing to imagine, especially if there's no issue, no reason for it. That's really crazy. That's upsetting. I'm so sorry.
And it's weird, because I'm so freaking old that, I highly doubt, I don't ever be called tested for anything as a kid. You know what I mean? Like as far as special needs goes, and who knows? Maybe I'm autistic. I mean, I was very socially awkward as a kid. I was not into the party scene of, even in high school. If I got invited to parties, I usually didn't go.
Yeah.
Because I just felt uncomfortable around large settings like that. And then I go into the music business, obviously, and that kind of helped change that a little bit.
Now you're just around thousands all the time. And it's great. It's great. It's great. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's great. Wow, that's really crazy. So this is really interesting to me. So I'm trying to think, there must be like another thing. So what's the most helpful thing someone can do if they're with someone, a child who's autistic, and they want to help them like get through something?
Oh, straight up, just love and understanding. That's the best way really to support them. You know what I mean? Like not getting angry when you know that it's something that they can't help. It'd be real easy to be like, "Quiet," but they don't understand why their own brain's doing it. They just think it's normal that they're having meltdowns or temper tantrums or what's said. And you just gotta let them know that everything's fine, not a big problem. Let's take some steps back. We'll reset ourselves, take some breaths, and then we'll look at the problem and we'll move forward.
Got it. Good dad over here. Good dad. Good dad. Well, thank you for telling us a little bit about that. I really don't know much about it at all. That's a really crazy story about the parents down the street. So, like you said. Well, I wanted to kind of revisit another thing. How we met in the first place was Roadie Relief, and kind of talk about that. So tell everyone about it, what you were doing, everything you did. You guys were able to do a lot during the pandemic, right?
Yeah, I mean, Roadie Relief started on a Zoom call with a bunch of other roadies, all complaining that, pandemic sucked, but most importantly, that a lot of them could not get financial aid from their states as far as like
unemployment.
Thank you. I just totally brain farted. But they couldn't get unemployment because when you go on to unemployment, and I couldn't either at the time. Like they just did not understand. They're just like, nope. because they're like, I remember, I don't know if I said this before in part one, but they told me like, well, there's a job opening at the movie theater here in Omaha. I'm like, what? I said to the guy, what has that got to do with my job? He's like, well, I don't understand your job. I don't understand what you do. And I was like, well, it's definitely not working at this concession stand making $8.50 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So all these road crew guys I was with were angry. So I got off the phone and was super angry. And the first dumb thing I did was set up a GoFund for $1 million. And of course, over a couple days, it had gained $0. And I was like, okay, wait, I am freaking out. I need to take a step back at what I'm looking at and reevaluate this whole thing about how I could do it successfully. I'm like, because nobody's going to donate $1 million to a guy who's just saying donate $1 million to a bunch of people. So I took it. I went on to the GoFund. I wrote a brand new heading for it, explaining what was going on. But all these road crew guys, work basically paycheck to paycheck. A lot of them have families. A lot of them don't have insurance. And that because the pandemic was so crazy and nobody knew it came out of nowhere and shut the world down. Nobody knew when we were all going to go back to work. So I was like, how can I do this? So then I made the Instagram page for it. And what I did is I just started reaching out to road crew and saying, hey, would you let me profile you on my Instagram? And it's funny because a lot of people said no. They didn't know what I meant. And I was like, look, I just want you to tell me a little about you in a paragraph. I'm like, it doesn't have to be long in a paragraph. Explain who you are, what you do, how long you've done it, and send me some photos of yourself. That way people could go on to Roadie Relief Instagram and see these people's faces, put a name with a face and see who they've worked for and how long they've been doing it and how this has affected them. I felt like that would be a better way for people to be like, okay, well, I do want to donate to this. And then it just grew. Like it went on to be a full-time job for me during the pandemic as putting together auctions, and that entailed me having to reach out to management companies, artists, seeing who wanted to donate items that were signed, said, whatever, and then getting it all to me, which I regret. I wish I would have just had everybody hold on to that stuff and then been like, here's your winner, send it to them.
Absolutely.
Instead, I spent weeks at the post office here, knows me by first name now, which is hilarious. Because I would just come in with boxes upon boxes, to ship off to the winners of the auctions.
Yeah, that's how I remember seeing you for the first time with that Instagram page, and there was so much engagement, and there was such an outpouring of love, like all your friends in the industry, like giving you, you had like insane things for the auctions. What were some of those things again?
Oh, I had great items. Like, I had a Nick Thompson of Slipknot sent me one of his guitars signed.
Oh, yeah. No big deal. Hey.
Papa from Ghost, Tobias Forge, sent me a Hackstrom guitar, which he had signed. And it was the cool thing about it is actually the first time he ever signed any item under his most recent name, I should say.
Oh, wow.
Would be Papa Emeritus the Fourth or whatever. So,
so this is new Kanye name.
That was kind of a big deal, because before that he was the Cardinal Copia, and so this was the first thing he ever signed.
Wow.
Back as Papa again. So that Ghost item had drumsticks from
Do you know him? Do you know him personally?
I do know Tobias personally, yes.
Okay, cool. How is he? Is he a good guy? Is he
He
funny?
is,
Is he quiet?
I love him very much.
Okay.
He's a sweetheart. He's a very passionate and kind dude. And I've had him over at my house for dinner. I just hit it off well with him. I like him. He's quiet spoken, but he's well spoken. He's articulate. You know what I mean? Like he's a good person to sit and have a great conversation with.
Awesome. Good. Well, good to know. You hear so many things about ghosts, but it is like more the myth, the man, the myth, the legend than
it's kind of weird because
him.
a boy from Nebraska and a boy from Sweden become friends. Like so far apart, and obviously we're different in age too.
Yeah.
Older than he is.
By like by 1 year, I'm sure. Just by 1 year. Yeah. So that's awesome. Well, there were more things though. I still want to talk about like other cool auction items. I remember something from Foo Fighters and something from 311, right?
I had 311, Foo Fighters, Korn, Slipknot, Pearl Jam, Logic, the rapper. I got a signed poster from The Weeknd.
Oh wow!
Yeah, like it's cool. Like a lot of artists came together and put stuff in. Behemoth sent me a whole like cool clothing package and stuff.
I love Behemoth. I love them.
Yeah.
They're very fun.
And like I said, Korn. Ray from Korn personally did a bunch of stuff, but also the band as a whole sent a guitar that they had all signed, which was really sweet of them.
Awesome.
So
Steve I know
Vai. I can't go without saying Steve Vai. I mean, that guy ended up being my hero of the whole thing. Like, that guy's a legendary guitar player, and I had never met him before. And we got introduced via a friend, and I had a very good conversation with him. And not only did he donate a signed guitar, and he donated a private guitar lesson, but he also actually donated $5,000 himself to the GoFund, which was unreal. I was like, what a class act. Like he was the only artist that actually donated money. So I thought that was really insanely cool.
That's awesome. Very cool. I love that. So you guys were just basically able to help out roadies like during the pandemic with that.
Yeah, I was busy doing that. And a lot of people think Roadie Relief was a lot of people. It wasn't. It was me and one other person, and that's it.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
The other person was like beyond helpful to me. She was the tech person, basically, of everything. She's master wizard of the technical side of things, where I guess I was the face of it all. But I was the one also, the one getting all the merchandise and everything. I was kind of all me. But the important thing was to make it real. So I had to really fight to get my 501c3 quickly, which is not an easy thing to do. I mean, I knew nothing about getting a 501c3 for charities, to be a functioning charity. So I had to hire a lawyer and spend more money.
Yay!
Spend more of my money to help make other people money. But it was all worth it.
Yeah.
It was all worth it.
Well, it's such a cool idea. Do you think it's something that like maybe someone else could like help continue if they wanted to like pop in and work on that and continue to give back to the roadie community? It's I know you're back to work, but it was such a cool thing. I get to see it like totally go away forever.
That's great being back to work. I don't think I ever took for granted, my work. And I hope a lot of other roadies now don't either if they did, because it's a blessing to have the line of work that we have,
Absolutely.
because nowadays it's not as easy to get into the music business. But then again, it is, but I don't know, like it's a much more, what am I looking for? Like back in the day, there was no resume. That didn't exist in the music business. Nobody was ever like, send me your resume. And people would just start laughing at that, and references and all that shit. Like, you just got hired by word of mouth. And you shook hands. There was no contracts. There was no nothing. So
that's good to know. Yeah, that's definitely a different feeling than how it is now, for sure. It's a very different vibe. It's like, oh, I like you, or this is my cousin's friend, or this is my brother's best friend, or whatever. I just hired my friend from high school, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's, when I first started, it was with 311, and I was just a friend from high school,
Yeah.
Technically for what they needed at the time. Nowadays, I wouldn't have got the gig probably, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I probably wouldn't have been qualified enough. But
yeah. My first question segueing back into music was that you set me up perfectly for, which I love. I feel like there's more going on in the music industry now than ever before. Do you feel like that's true? Or do you think that's my anxiety kicking in and wanting to make sure I'm keeping up with the times?
No, I think, I'll probably think the music industry's kicked in like this ever. You know what I mean? Like being completely shut down for 2 years. Like the second that, the green light came, it's insanity. And it's weird because I know a lot of road crew, roadies, whatever, that, hey, if you have a job, let me know. I'm looking for work. And now it's the opposite. It's like, I know more roadies turning down work than looking for work, because I don't think in the history of music has every single artist in the world wanted to tour all at the same time. And it's affecting everything. It's putting anxiety with everybody because, vendors don't have enough supplies, they're booked out. And now you're like, crap, where are we going to get a PA? Where are we going to get these lights? What bus company am I going to use? Because all the buses are rented out. Yeah, it's wild right now.
Yeah, there's bands canceling tours. Like Miss May I just canceled. Cold had to cancel their tour a while back. They're coming back around in March, I think. But yeah, it's just very crazy. And a lot online, like everything's self-created. Everything like boomed in self-creation. You create something, I'm continuing to build something, and there's like no barrier to entry to creating something on your own.
Yeah, and I mean, 2023 is going to be I think, probably the craziest year for live music touring, because 2022, a lot of people were still like, maybe not yet. It's still kind of COVID-y.
Yeah.
But now 23 is coming, and I think everybody's just done. Even though COVID's still out there, it's become like a cold now. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's such a fear factor of it anymore. So it's becoming more common. So I think this year is just going to be. I've heard so many tours going out. It's insane. Meanwhile, it's a very easy year for me.
Yeah, very easy for you. I have some friends, like their singer got COVID, and their management was like, just wear a mask around the bus and just keep going on the tour because we really can't pull out the tour. So he was just like performing with COVID.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's tours where an artist has gotten COVID at this point and they didn't shut it down.
Yep.
But
it's been public about a lot of people who have. So There's both.
I mean, we just did a live show, not that long ago, and one of our members couldn't perform because he had gotten COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and we're just, could he have got up and played? Sure, because he was, it's not like he was, I'm sure he's had flu and cold worse than how he felt, but
yeah,
we're sticking to the safe protocols of things right now, but I highly doubt everybody plays that game.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Well, some bands I don't think can afford to. They can't afford to just be like, oh, we're gonna not play our next 5 shows,
or like cancel an entire tour or something like that.
I mean,
yeah.
And if it's a singer, you just tell your singer, oh, unfortunately, we'll turn your back to the crowd so you don't spit on them.
Yeah. So you've been in country for a while now. How has your music taste changed since you've been in country?
Well, I didn't really know a lot about country. And over the course of, half of, the fall of 2021 and all of 2022 being in country, I've heard a lot of music I've never heard before in my life. But what's sad to me is I don't feel like country is country anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm watching.
Like,
are you watching the new Showtime?
Have you heard some of the new country that's out now? Like, I don't.
No, are you watching the new Tammy, George and Tammy show on Showtime right now?
Oh
my God. It. George Jones and Tammy Wynette.
Yeah, Tammy Wynette. Isn't it?
It's on Showtime. It is.
Yeah, it's
Jessica Chastain.
Yeah, Jessica Chastain.
Jessica Chastain.
Yeah.
And the guy who plays the villain in every movie.
I love him, and I always forget his name. But
Michael Shannon, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that when he played. Ever seen the movie The Night Before?
I don't know. What was it?
Oh my gosh, he plays Mr. Green. He plays an angel who's a weed dealer.
Okay, that even in itself sounds completely different, out of his wheelhouse. But that, going back to that show, that is the kind of heartbreaking country, the story behind Stand By Your Man, and just the way only Hollywood can, just tell that story. Oh my God, oh my heart. God.
I think about all the country from back in the day, and then I get into the country business, and I one of the first bands I heard, I'm like, who's really big right now? This was in fall of 21. I'm like, who's the really big country acts? And they're like, oh, this Dan and Shay. And I was like, okay. So I typed Dan and Shay into my phone.
Yeah.
And that couldn't be, to me at least, that's the furthest thing from country I've ever heard in my life. It's just straight pop music.
Yeah, that's not. I think I have a feel for what they sing, but have you ever heard Pistol Annies?
Who is it?
Pistol Annies. It's Miranda Lambert and 2 other girls.
Yes.
Love that. See,
Right.
I don't know. I'm a woman. I feel like I can do more of whatever the hell I want, whenever
Absolutely.
I want. I love Pistol Annies, and Casey Musgraves can be a little country with Golden Hour. There's some poppy stuff that I can go run to, or I kayak and listen to that stuff, and that's fun for me. So I can get away with it more than a man who's looking for a good country song. It's going to be harder for you than it is for me.
Well, I've heard so much a lot now, and I'm just like, wow, that doesn't sound country to me. That doesn't sound country to me. That doesn't sound country to me. So yeah, I'm like, well, maybe country's just not country anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. I do actually. I have the biggest crush ever. I love Lee Brice. Lee Brice is Oh my God, my biggest crush in country, I would say.
I listen.
Oh, he's so good. I listened to 6 months straight, like all day, every day. And then he played Fort Worth. And it was at Billy Bob's, and there were tables and everyone was sitting down. And I stood up because like I couldn't sit down because it was too weird to me. So he just like sang the entire set to me. So that's like the story that will like continue me on into my 90s. And like that was good for me. And that was great. Right. So I think I don't know. As a woman, I think there's like some cute, fun things about new country.
I guess I'm just old school. I like original Hank Williams and Charlie Daniels Band, and obviously Willie Nelson. And
yeah, I love all that stuff. I guess I'm just attracted to men who like all the old stuff, but I still get to enjoy some of the new stuff. But I guess on my metal podcast, I shouldn't continue to talk about that. I should let that die down and continue on to the next topic of conversation. So you're not so much into the new country, but I'm sure you love who you work for, right?
Zac Brown Band.
Yeah.
If you've never seen them live, you better get out there, people, because I was blown away the first show I did with them. And I didn't know any of their music. Like, I didn't even know Chicken Fried. People are like, you know this song, right? I was like, nope. Yeah, I mean, if you've never seen them live, man, it is such a great show. They are such a phenomenal band and put on it is 2 hours of just fun. You know what I mean? And it's made me a huge fan.
That's awesome.
You know, I think some of the guys who have worked for them for a very long time are like, dude, are you sick or something? Because I'll be listening to it when we're not working. They're like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, well, I'm late to the game. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You know, and this year,
I miss you guys.
This year, you know, when we hit the road, somebody that I got turned on to through them is Marcus King. And man, I'm a huge fan now. That dude is unreal. Like, if you guys don't know who Marcus King is, get out there and hear that, because he's mind-blowing. What a phenomenal guitar player and amazing singer.
Is there a specific song you recommend?
No. All of it. He's great. All of it. He's awesome.
All of it. There you go. That's awesome. So, an incredible career in music and teching for like the biggest bands in the world. So what's something kind of like amazing, wonderful, and awesome, and a little bit of a takeaway for every band that you've worked with?
Ooh.
Besides,
I mean, that's a hard question.
It should be easy. I mean, you started with 311.
I started with 311, yeah. And I mean, I feel like your first tour will always be one of your favorites because it was so new. You know, I knew nothing and we knew nothing, and we were just out adventuring around the road together, being a bunch of 21-year-olds, because we were all 21 at the time. And, well, not all of us. Peanut was the young kid who were basically sneaking into everywhere. You know, he was only 17 at the time. So, but I'll always cherish those days of just showing me the world and what possibilities were out there, you know. And you know, one day in particular, Limp Bizkit that I worked for during their heyday, like some of the absolute.
What do you mean, today or like now or back then? Because they've got like another heyday going on. I know, just being funny. Being funny.
I'm talking the height of their career. I'm talking selling out every venue that we even thought about playing. And it was so exciting because you never knew what was going to happen. You know, Freddie D was in my eyes, I mean, people are like, yeah, I hate that guy's voice. And whether you like his singing or not, that's besides the point. The guy will always be one of the greatest frontmen I have ever experienced live. And I've seen a lot of frontmen, and I'm talking before I even was in the music business. I mean, I saw Queen live, when I was 8 years old. Fred Durst was a genius on stage because he could just take a crowd in the palm of his hand and just control them at will. And technically, I feel like that's what a crowd wants. They want to be taken over by their artist and given that magical experience of the live show. So, like the 99 Woodstock on the Monday, MTV, Limp Bizkit causes riot. It's like, we weren't even there when the riot happened. We were all back in California in our homes. Because that riot started on a Sunday. But they all blamed him because of, you see the videos of the people surfing the crowd on the plywood, and then he surfing the crowd on the plywood. But that's where I'm saying, like, he could just control a crowd so easily because of how great of a frontman he was. He could just get everybody so excited that the next thing you knew, they were tearing plywood off the towers out there so that they could surf.
Mm-hmm.
So I always cherished Limp Bizkit days just because of the sheer craziness of it, and just it's the time of my life. I had so much fun back then.
Well, Limp Bizkit was like my youth. So I was in middle school, like during their heyday, and I never got the opportunity to like see them live till I was an adult. And it was just like the most like all-encompassing, incredible feeling. And it was like my youth. And it was nothing. I love Limp Bizkit, and I never stopped loving them. And I've seen them live like 2-3 times, like I think twice. And he's an incredible frontman. He's very, very fun to talk to. I've met him both times. I saw him. And it was, that was like a dream thing to talk to him. But that's just one of my favorite bands of all time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't people really realize how talented that band was and how amazing live they were. They were so tight. Everybody in that band, obviously Wes is a phenomenal guitar player, but Sam Rivers is a monster bass player. John Otto is not your typical metal drummer because he grew up playing jazz music, so he's got so much more swing. But I went and saw Limp Bizkit, in 21. Yeah, in 21 when they had a fill-in drummer for John for a minute. And I love the drummer who was playing with them. He's a monster drummer, but it did not feel the same at all. Because he just didn't have that swing that John Otto had. So, I don't know, like Limp Bizkit, when it's the all original members, that's a force to be reckoned with live. Like, they're a phenomenal band live. Whether you like their music or not, you should see them live because they rock.
Yeah. And I love them. And I was talking to someone else last night, and also Papa Roach live, I would say, gives me the same kind of feeling. I love Papa Roach. I was talking to someone last night about like how incredible of a show they put on. And the person I was talking to, they're like, oh, Papa Roach. And they were like, oh, no. I'm like, no, they're incredible. But I would say like Papa Roach and Limp Bizkit, like same feeling that I felt. Just pure jubilant happiness, joy, and oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Best show ever.
Oh.
Yeah. I like it.
But we don't give a shit, fuck you era attitude. That 90s, late 90s attitude era.
Yep. Yeah. And when I was in high school, and there was Well, yeah, that was like middle school ish, like that fuck you attitude was those Limp Bizkit albums for me. And then in high school, we had like some rebellious albums from Papa Roach. And they weren't like their most popular albums. And I would know, like, I loved them though. And it was perfect for me. And I knew every word. And I spent like years in Jacoby and I would just like sing the lyrics, like literally straight to each other in a stadium, and like no one else knew that shit, and I fucking knew that shit, and that was great, and that was fun. Yeah, so I was just talking about this. I'm like, I remember when I felt like that. Oh yeah. I know. I need to get to a festival immediately. Can you tell? I like it's January. Like there's not a good show coming around for a while. I'm getting the miss net a little bit, if you can tell. I'm getting all amped up talking about it for sure. So that was Limp Bizkit, band after Limp Bizkit.
That was a fun time.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember who was after Limp Bizkit? Are you thinking your timeline? You're like, wait, hold on, who was it?
Well, I mean, obviously, like I always worked for people in between, like my main artists that I work for.
Yeah.
For the most part, you know, like I've always tried to keep myself busy, but like I did a little stint with like American Idol right after Limp Bizkit, which led me to work with Clay Aiken and Kelly Clarkson. And then, you know, great, absolutely great.
Okay, good. Okay.
Both. Like Clay Aiken, I mean, that dude was amazing to work for. And even though musically I was like, oh gosh, this is not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
It was still a great tour, and he was an unbelievable person to work for, and he was funny, and we had a blast on tour. And then Kelly Clarkson, I could say the same for her. Absolute sweetheart. Stellar to work for. Like I got called, you know, to get hired for Foo Fighters when I was working for Kelly Clarkson. And I actually turned the gig down twice. First, I was just like, nah, not interested, because I was loving being on her tour. Like, she was so much fun. I was like, I'm going to stick it out with this girl. And then production manager at the time called me again, and I was just like, oh, you know, and then Taylor gets on the phone. And I'd known Taylor for years at this point, through a mutual friend. And he's like, dude, you got to come on the road with us. And after talking with him for like 20 minutes, I was like, okay, all right. Well, let me talk to your production manager. And the production manager, and I said, well, when would you need me? The production manager was like, now. And I'm like, well, I'm on tour. Like, what do you mean now? He goes, I'd have to fly you out like obviously not tomorrow, but the day after. And I was like, okay, no go. Can't do that. I wouldn't do that to her. So I hung up. Only to get called back by Taylor and be like, dude, what's that? And I was like, I can't do that. Your production manager wants me to leave now, and I just can't do that. I won't do that. And he's like, okay, let me call you back. Well, he doesn't call me back. Production manager calls me back like a day later and says, how's 12 days? I think it was 11 or 12 days. I said, that's doable. You know, like now I can find a replacement or they can find a replacement, and I can teach this person the gig, and I'm not feeling like such a dick being like, hey, I'm just out. You know, so that happened. So I spent 11 more days on the road with Kelly, and then I went straight on to Foo Fighters.
What was the first show like when you were there?
The first show with Foo Fighters?
Yeah. So now I'm wondering, I'm like, how was it when you got there?
Well, I did. I went. Well, we were in the studio at the time, so I went straight to 606 out in LA, and I decided to start putting his gear together that he had, and figuring out what he wanted to use for tour. But my first actual show with them was um, it was a TV show in France.
Got it.
So I was kind of like weird, like, because the first thing we did was promo for the new album that was going to come out at the time, and so the first thing we did is we flew straight to Europe and did a bunch of TV shows, and we did one show. It was like a BBC weekend or something, and it was a very weird show to do with them because it was like us and Black Eyed Peas, and like I think they were probably the heaviest band playing. So it was fun,
Yeah.
and then obviously, long story short, I spent 13 and a half years with them.
Yeah. We had the memorial for Taylor not too long ago, maybe like 4 or 5 months back, something like that. How have your feelings progressed, during that time? And do you have a different way of looking at it, feeling about it? For anyone like just, catching up from the first part, you have a Taylor Hawkins tattoo on your face. It's a really lovely tribute, right there. So it was really important to you. How are you dealing with the grieving process of all that?
I'm actually in a good place right now. It's weird. Like when he passed away, I was in denial. This didn't seem real. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people felt that way. I was like, this can't be real. This isn't happening. And then the sad thing is I had a friend pass away literally a month later. Somebody who was my roommate at one point for a brief period, and just a very good friend of mine for 30 years almost. So to have Taylor, who I'd been friends with for 25 years, and then my friend Robert, who I'd been friends with for 30 years, both passed away in a month's time frame. I went down a very dark hole and grieved really hard. And it was for me like, why is this happening? Because between the two of them, they made when Robert passed away, that was my fifth friend in a 2-year time period. Not even 2 years, 18 months to pass away. So it was pretty rough. Like, and it's hard when one of them, like Taylor, is like Taylor, and no matter where you go, you cannot not see it.
Yeah.
Anytime I picked up the phone, like, it's on Instagram, it's on the news, it's like.
I went to the doctor around the same time of when that was happening and when we were first doing our podcast episode. And like all the ladies at the front desk were talking about it. Like I didn't like say anything about like, oh yeah, I'm doing a podcast. I was just like walked into a doctor's office and the ladies at the front desk were talking about it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, and I had never experienced losing somebody that's world famous. You know what I mean? And I truly feel like it makes it a lot harder because you just can't escape it.
Yeah.
And anybody who's ever met you in their life, it's the first thing they want to talk about. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear. Like, it's like, you're like, the best thing we can do is not talk about it. So could you not talk about it, please?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Then I guess some people will be like, well, you have it tattooed on your face. I'm like, yeah, but that's for personal reasons,
Yeah.
It's not really. I didn't tattooed on my face because I want to talk about it. Like that's what I would tell people. Like, why'd you tattoo it on your face? I'm like, because there's a whole meaning of the reason and the placement of where I put this. Like, but that's for me. You know, my heart's in a good place right now.
So there's one other band that, we can't not talk about, Slipknot. I remember talking to you one time when you were in their warehouse, their touring warehouse. And it was a place that could carry an echo for sure. There was a lot of gear in there, lots of stuff. What can you say about your time with Slipknot? And can you tell us anything fun about production for that? Because that band is all about production, and that's so much what we know them for.
I mean, I loved my time with Slipknot. Like, they're an incredible metal band. And I really, really like several members in that band. Not that I don't like any member in that band, but there's a few particular members that I really enjoyed my time with, and just getting to witness the energy that they put out, live is pretty freaking cool. And especially after all these years, because as you know, most of them are not spring chickens. They're all around my age, so it's cool to see it still. And I love the production, aspect of their show. It's evolved, like them evolving video production into their whole spiel. I thought was a cool way to move forward in their live shows. And Bob Strickle, their front of house sound man from 2019 on, is phenomenal. Like, what a great audio mixer, and he makes them sound so good live. I had a lot of fun with that crew. Like, that's a wacky bunch. Like, people are probably, if they could see behind the set, they probably would just died laughing, because we are just idiots back there.
Well, yeah, with the jumpsuits and the masks and everything. Yeah, I think we would all imagine that for sure. So just kind of talking about really cool shows, I wanted to ask you, last few questions. Are there any shows that you've seen that are just your favorite of all time? If you worked it or if you saw it, just ones that were unforgettable for you.
Hard, though. It's so hard. I've seen so many good shows in my life that I'm so blessed by that. And I'm so thankful for all the shows I've gotten to see. Before I ever became a roadie, I'd probably say my favorite show I ever saw was Alice Cooper.
Obvious reasons.
And part of me is like, were you just young? And I'm like, no, because at the time that this concert took place, his production was leaps and bounds ahead of everybody.
Yeah.
Like, they did a thing where, like, he's escaping a mental hospital, and they'd be showing it on a huge movie screen behind the band and everything. And then when he was escaping, and the moment he can't go any further in the screen, he comes running out of the screen. I mean, perfectly timed. All the people chasing him all come out of the screen. And they're running around the stage, shit's getting knocked over there. Then all of a sudden he runs back to the screen, perfectly timed, and he's back on the screen again. And I actually got to speak with him about it. And I told him, hey, I saw you on the $1 Million Motion Picture Show tour. And he's like, I go, yeah. And he goes, that's still my favorite tour I think I've ever done. He's like, we had to rehearse that show for over 3 months to get all that timing down.
Yeah.
Because technology back then was crap, So for them to pull that off every night live was really incredible.
Wow. I mean, even
Roadie,
that today, that's like, seems like unfathomable to achieve.
It would
Even
to
by
this day, it would
today.
take a lot of practice to time that, something like that.
Yeah.
You know? And then I can't remember what birthday it was with his Dave's 40. I don't know, one of Dave Grohl's birthdays in his 40s. We played the Forum, and it wasn't like a Foo Fighters show though. It was just special guest after special guest after special guest, and they played in the round with very minimal production.
Mm-hmm.
The stage just rotated in a circle while they were playing. It never stopped rotating. So it'd go one way, go another way, go another way, but it always kept moving so people could always see every angle. And I was the only person who got to be on the stage other than a musician, because I had to be up there for all of Taylor's mic moves. So I was sitting in a lawn chair next to the drum kit, which was mildly embarrassing, being like, hi, I'm the lawn chair guy, everybody, to the entire forum. But it was neat to the fact that I felt like I had a very, I had the front row seat, you know, with like Paul Stanley from Kiss playing, you know, David Lee Roth singing, you know, Slash and Zach Wild and Tenacious D, and I mean, Joan Jett, Lemmy. I mean, it was a great show.
That's awesome.
So,
well, yeah, no, it's, I mean, you have to look around at your surroundings and, you know, look at like who you're working for, and then look at yourself and feel like, done pretty good for myself. I'm doing pretty good. Yeah. Well, that's a really cool show. That's a great story. I love that story. That's awesome.
Well, that was a cool one, you know, and like
great.
I did Live Earth at Wembley Stadium back when they did the show, you know, and Spinal Tap played and Genesis played, and every huge band you could think of played that day. That was a really neat show to be a part of. You know, now even looking back at that 99 Woodstock, you know, little did I know, I was just like, oh, it's just Limp Bizkit doing another festival show, even though it was called Woodstock. But yeah, it will forever go down in history now.
So you were working for Limp Bizkit during the famous Woodstock show. Yep. On record, they didn't do anything. They were back home when the riot started. They could just get a crowd going. Not their fault.
Yeah, crushed it.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, I just wanted to wrap it up there. Touring friends are my favorite friends. The show doesn't happen without the crew. Thank you, Yeti or Chad. What do I call you? I never can pick. I think about it both ways. Every time I reach out to you, I'm like, do I call you Chad? Do I call you Yeti? I don't know. I don't remember. But thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
My heart is with you. And what were you saying? You were about to be like, well, my friends call me this. My friends call me this. What do you think I should call you?
Well, I'd say Yeti to most people.
Okay. Yeah. Because, there you go. We'll go with Yeti. We'll go with Yeti. Yeah.
Yeti's the name.
Okay. I'll call you Yeti. You can call me Scandalous. So ha ha ha.
There you go.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Anything else you want to share, talk about, mention?
No.
Okay.
Just keep rocking on.
And love a roadie, hug a roadie. There you go. Just thought about that. Hug a roadie. There you go.